It is now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of WP Roundtable. My name is Jason Crawford, coming to you from Medellin, Colombia, and Rich.
And this is Rich, and I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, freelance web developer. Kellen.
Hello, ladies and germs. I'm Kellen Mace. I'm a freelance web developer as well, from Michigan, just like Kyle. Happy to have on Jeff from the Tavern tonight. Kyle next.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Kyle. I do stuff, and really glad to have Jeff Chandler on the show today. Been really excited about this episode because Jeff's quite the character, and I love talking with him, and I love what he does. He's the man behind WP Tavern and the WordPress Weekly podcast. It's a couple things that I'm a big fan of. Very important parts of the WordPress community. So we're going to talk to Jeff a little bit about those two projects, the Tavern and his podcast, and everything that he does, and touch on his New Year's resolutions and see where we go. So Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll jump into the next bit.
Well, what is there for me to say? You pretty much just said my introduction. I mean, if I was more important, I'd have more to say. But so I'm Jeff Chandler. I'm a contributing writer to WPTavern.com, one of the largest websites devoted to WordPress and its ecosystem. And I also live in the Cleveland, Ohio area, where about 7 or 8 years ago, the closest thing that we had to a tech conference here in Ohio was a LAN party. But thankfully, that's changed, and a lot of that has to do with the WordPress at WordCamps. But the scenes change over the years. A lot more technology-oriented things here in the state.
That's awesome. You're so cool, Jeff, and we're so glad that you're here.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
First, we're going to do the quick picks of the week. Everybody's got a quick pick that we've selected over the course of this past week that we want to share with our audience. So I'll tell you first, my quick pick of the week, 4.1 just dropped, and that's not my quick pick, but for those of you who don't know, you can go to make.wordpress.org and click on Core, and on the sidebar there's a link called something, and you click on it, and you will see the plugins which are being developed for potential inclusion in Core in a future release, which I think is really, really cool, and I follow it closely. So for those who don't know, features that go into WordPress Core get started as plugins, and so there's some interesting ones there now. Most of what is on the current list are features that have been rolled into a recent release, but a couple are being developed for potentially 4.2 or something shortly after. One in particular that I think is cool is a plugin called WordPress Front-End Editor. So front-end editing for your content is coming, it's planned, it's in the future, and there's a plugin that is the leading candidate for core inclusion that's in the repository right now. So you can check that out if you're a developer and you want to contribute to it, or if you're just a cool, nice person and you want to test it and give some feedback or whatnot. That's awesome. So that's my pick of the week.
Can I go next? I'm going to go next.
Yeah, go, Jeff. Go, go, go.
Okay. So my pick of the week is a plugin. Anytime I have an opportunity to plug this plugin, pun intended, I take the advantage of doing so. It's called Simple Comment Editing. It's by Ronald Eureka, and it's very simple. There's nothing to configure. You just install it, and what it does is it allows anonymous users who don't have an account. They have about 5 minutes, or that's the default time, to edit their comment. So out of the box, WordPress does not allow anonymous users to edit their comments. I think you can if you're a registered user, but I don't have experience in that realm with registered users. But I've done everything from this point in time with anonymous users. So this plugin is awesome. Of course, if 5 minutes is not enough, you can go in. There's a filter or a hook where you can adjust the time. But other than that, it's just a set and forget type of plugin, and I think your readers will love you for it, because there's nothing more annoying than getting comments from people just saying, hey, could you edit this for me because I have a typo? So this allows your readership to edit their own comments. Great plugin by Ronald.
And my pick of the week is, I'm going to spell it out, EWWW. Ew. Image Optimizer. I couldn't find anywhere what the acronym stands for, but EWWW Image Optimizer. And it's just a very basic way to reduce the sizes of your images in your variety of posts. Actually, it'll go through WordPress and even reduce the file size of some of the non-media library images, some of the things in your themes, things like that. I've been playing around with it. So far, it looks good. I don't see any stability issues. In the repository, it's got 4.7 out of 5 stars with 124 out of about 140 5-star votes. It was updated this week to be compatible with 4.1, 600,000 downloads. Last week I talked about the plugin Performance Profiler, PPP, and one of the things I realized was what I was using for image optimizing was really, really heavy. So I went looking for something, and so far, Image Optimizer has been a good deal.
Can we turn that into a soundbite? You saying ew?
Yeah.
Sure, Jeff.
Very nice. I wonder how that stacks up against WP Smush It. You guys familiar with that one?
I had used WP Smush It for a while. It doesn't like any files over 1 meg, which was a problem for some of my files. When I just I didn't want to have to mess with them ahead of time. I just wanted to dump them in. This will go through and pull off, all your metadata, and it doesn't have any file size issues.
That's cool. Yeah, I know the file size issue with the Smush plugin. They're quick to say that's not our limitation. That's Yahoo's, since it's their service they're using. But yeah, it's there nonetheless, like you're saying, right? Very cool. I'll jump in next. Then my pick of the week is WP All Import, a plugin by Louis Rheingold's company, Soulfly. I was looking for a solution for importing some CSV files, and I kind of scoured the WordPress repo and found a few that do a good job for posts and pages, but and some that support custom post types as well. But they still, from what I saw at least, they still force you to import the title and content fields, even if those don't apply to your custom post type that you may have put together with your own fields in it. So I didn't really find a full solution, I would say. But WP All Import seemed to do the trick. What's really cool about it, in my opinion, is you can set up what they call templates. So if you routinely have the site owner needing to import CSV data, you can kind of set up a template for them that just kind of automates the whole process. It remembers from the last time essentially what to do with each of the fields and where they go and that kind of stuff. So really great plugin for importing CSVs and also XML data if you need to do that in your site.
All right. Well, my pick of the week is actually a ebook by iThemes entitled "How Selling WordPress Maintenance Can Save Your Business." And I know this is something, I don't know if we talked about this on air, but I know this is something we talked about many episodes ago, probably like 25 episodes ago. And should we or should we not be selling maintenance packages and backup packages and all that stuff? And I thought this ebook had a really unique twist on it and made some good points of how you can bring value instead of just feeling like you're ripping people off. So if anybody's doing, especially if you got a one-person business there or a small business with WordPress, it's a good little short ebook to read, and I thought it was good.
Thanks, Jason. And thank you, guys. Those are some good picks. So we're going to get to learn a little bit more about Jeff. For those tuning in, you can follow Jeff on Twitter at Jeffro, JEFFR0, and tweet your trollish questions his direction.
Thanks a lot. Oh, shout out to Nick, too. Thanks for answering my questions last week, but looks like you're not here. Haha.
We'll send him a link to this episode, and you can cry about the opportunity he missed. All right. So, Jeff, we want to hear the story, and you can give the abridged or the unabridged version. That's up to you, about how you got into WordPress and ultimately found your calling and established your career as the founder and contributor towards the WP Tavern.
Well, it started a long time ago, probably when I was, geez, I just turned 31 yesterday. So when I say long time ago, I'm talking about 15 years, which is kind of mind-boggling to think back. I'm talking this way. I don't feel that old yet. But about 15, 16 years ago, I was really big into Counter-Strike. What was this, 1999, 2000 era Counter-Strike and Quake 3 Arena and those games, and I was involved with a clan, which is sort of a group of people who plays the same game together, and they needed somebody who knew a little something about content management systems or something of that nature. We needed a website, and at the time I didn't really know anything about content management systems, PHP, or anything of that nature. I was sort of getting my feet wet with HTML, with the marquee tags, the blink tags, all that cool stuff, like Angel Fire, all that cool stuff. So ended up hooking up with a gentleman that was in our clan, and he had some knowledge of this, and he created a website for us that was on PHP Nuke, but then we eventually upgraded to Post Nuke, which was an open source project at the time, and that was my first experience of using a system where the static HTML files, I didn't have to worry about that anymore. I didn't have to update 20 HTML files if I made a link or a change. Everything was self-contained within Post Nuke, and it had modules and different themes, and it was like, it blew my mind how cool that was, how it really simplified just writing content and managing content. So after Post Nuke, I'd say about a few years later, I ended up discovering, I sort of went through this process of the nukes, and then E107, and then I used a couple of other systems that were available in cPanel through Fantastico because it was there, it was available for me. E107 was kind of cool, but eventually I ended up with Joomla, and then for a long time I thought Joomla was the best thing since sliced bread because it had this really cool default theme, Solar Flare, if anyone remembers that. It had modules, you could assign modules to specific pages, it had menus. It was really cool. And then at some point, I decided that I wanted to have a blog, and Joomla didn't support comments out of the box. I'm not sure if they still don't support comments out of the box or if it's a module. I ended up wanting to create a new website, and I wanted to create it using WordPress. So I did that, launched WordPress, and as I started messing with the code, I realized, this is no good. This WordPress sucks. I want to go back to Joomla because it's something I know, it's something I've messed around with, I could work with it, jerry-rig it to do what I needed to do. So I went back to Joomla, did that for a while, says, okay, I'll give WordPress a second try, and that's when it hit me. That's when the light bulb went off. I understood what I needed to do with the directions for adding code to the various themes, from plugins to directions. I ended up creating a blog on WordPress and then started chronicling my experience using WordPress, and the rest is history from there.
So what were some of these sites that you were working on back then when you were trying out all these content management systems? Some of them I've never even heard of.
I wasn't actually working on any client websites. It was just my site. What is it that I can use that's going to power my site, which at the time I was just writing about whatever interested me, because I was using a blog network called EFX2, which I consider the WordPress.com before there was a WordPress.com. And it was a similar setup where we had a bunch of people that had subdomains off the EFX2.com domain. So it was really cool because we had this tight-knit community. Everyone sort of knew each other. You could follow each other's blogs. Before all this other stuff came that you could do now, we were doing back then. But eventually the website shut down because the owner was not able to maintain it, and there was money cost involved. So after about 2 or 3 years, I ended up having to move off to my own domain. And that's when I started experimenting. Once I had my own web hosting account with E107, the nukes. I think I used something else in between now and then, but then finally settled on Joomla for at least the next few years before I eventually moved on to WordPress.
Awesome. So at some point, you started the Tavern. Tell us a little bit about when you first started the WP Tavern and why you thought it would be a good idea to do a site just dedicated to WordPress stuff, and why you continued to write on it in those early days.
So about 2006, 2007, that's when I was really, that was during the whole Web 2.0 craze, the craze where there was just services popping up left and right with the betas and the cool shiny buttons and the graphics generators, fave icons. It was during that era where I created my own site, and what I was doing I was reviewing all these different services, which worked out for me because a lot of those services were linking back to me because of my review, and that sort of helped generate a lot of traffic. But amidst that, I was also writing about themes I discovered with WordPress, problem areas I discovered, bugs, things going on in core. I just sort of got this WordPress bug, and I just started writing about it. And unbeknownst to me, there was a lot of other people out there who ate this WordPress content up. They wanted more and more and more, and it was WordPress was in that growth spurt at the time, because not too long ago when I started writing about WordPress during this time was that whole movable type license fiasco, where a lot of people, because movable type at that time was the #1 blogging platform, and everybody sort of jumped ship and went over to WordPress. So sort of good timing there for me in terms of starting to write about WordPress. But I wrote about it for about a year or so, and then out of the blue I get this email by a fellow named Mark Ghosh, and it turns out that he was the owner and operator of a website called WeblawToolsCollection.com. And at that time, that was the #1 website, as far as I could tell, devoted to WordPress, and it was in one of the sites that was allowed to be in the WordPress dashboard, so it was seen and read by millions, or at least anybody who had access to the WordPress backend. And he sent me an email. He says, "I noticed you've written a lot of good content here about WordPress. How would you like to be paid to write about WordPress?" And I said, "Is that even possible?" He goes, "Yes, it is." I go, "Well, sign me up." So him actually being able to get paid to write about WordPress, and then on top of that, on the biggest website at that time devoted to WordPress, it was like a dream come true. And I don't even know how he found me. I don't think I've ever asked him how he ended up finding me, but he found me instead of me finding him. So just a really great turn of events. And I wrote for WeblawToolsCollection.com for about a year. Ended up gaining a following that who really enjoyed my work, followed everything I did. And at some point, Kyle Easlick of WPHacks.com was selling a domain. He was into domains, affiliate marketing, things like that, and he was selling a domain called WP Tavern. And one night at work, I just thought about it, and I said, what's in a tavern? I says, generally you have a friendly atmosphere. Every now and then you get a bar fight, but that's to be expected. Everybody goes there to hang out. It's like Cheers. I said, that would make the perfect recipe for a community with WordPress, and I think I'd be able to spearhead that and lead that. So I contacted him, said, this is what my plans are. He donated the domain to me for free, and that's pretty much how I started WP Tavern. I got the domain from him. Then in early 2009, I launched a site, and because I had the following from WeblawToolsCollection.com, I already had a good-sized base of people to support me in my work, and from there, I've been running the Tavern now for several years.
Hey Jeff, didn't you experiment with some kind of VIP services? I know I've listened to a lot of your past interviews, and I think we've talked about it. But what was your experience in trying to offer some kind of premium? I know that's becoming a new thing these days, but I think you were kind of ahead of your time when you tried to make that work. What was that about?
Well, at some point I realized maybe I've got this following. I've got people who really enjoy my content. Maybe I could turn this into a full-time job, because at the time I was working somewhere else full-time, and WordPress stuff, the Tavern, was just part-time. So I ended up experimenting with banner ads, display advertising, signing up to different affiliate programs, doing whatever I could to try and make a buck. And then somebody had mentioned, why don't you create sort of like this program, like a VIP program, where you could offer special discounts, behind-the-scenes content, maybe the after show for WordPress Weekly at the time, which was a podcast devoted to WordPress. And I said, maybe that's not a bad idea. I had a forum attached to the Tavern, and the forum was the place to be. I mean, all the cool people, the cool kids, the popular kids, anyone who was anyone in the WordPress community was on the Tavern forum, which was awesome. That really helped generate growth and the community aspect of the site. So I created this VIP program, charged a certain amount for it. Quite a few people paid me for it, but it just turned out after a few months that I felt like I couldn't deliver on the value I promised with the VIP program. And with the type of person I am, if I'm not delivering on that value, I think I'm ripping people off. And I just made the decision one day to even prorate. I gave everyone's money back. I prorated it, and I was surprised that some of the people responded to me and said, "What are you doing? Why are you giving me back my money? I just want to support what it is you're doing. I don't care whatever I get out of it, as far as the business goes. I just want to support you." And I said, "Well, hey, I just feel like I was ripping you off, so that's why I did it." And then at that point, I canned the VIP program, and I looked at other ways to generate money for the next year or two, but didn't work out.
Didn't you want to try to bring forums back to the Tavern? You've been talking to Triple J about that, trying to figure out how to make that work.
Yes, ever since the forums have gone away, I've missed them. It's really one of the key pieces I think missing from the Tavern right now in terms of having the real tight-knit community feel. I've spoken to Triple J, I've spoken to Matt Mulloway, and as far as I know, there's plans to have forums on the Tavern. I just don't know when. And I think one of the reasons why we might be waiting is because in a newer version of BBPress, there's supposed to be a feature where you can replace WordPress comments with BBPress replies. And I think what that does is it's going to allow people to sort of merge the community aspects of a forum and be able to have people start their own conversations mixed with having the blog aspect of WordPress, so sort of the best of both worlds. I think that's why we don't have the forums yet. We're waiting on that, but yeah, I wish I had the forums right here and right now because I miss those. But until then, if anyone's listening, there's a cool hangout place called wpchat.com. That's where I've been getting my forum fix until I have forums of my own.
That's a good tip. Thanks for passing that on. So I want to move on pretty soon to what's going on now and what's coming up. But help us get caught up to today. At some point, as we know, and you can tell the story in as much detail as you want, you came to a crossroads and said, I gotta go do something else, and an opportunity came for you to contribute to the Tavern full time as your dedicated role. And you chose to take that on and eventually got to where we are today. You want to talk about that just to get us up to present day?
Yeah, certainly. So so it came to a point where the VIP program crashed, in my opinion, or at least maybe I didn't let it go long enough. But after a year or two after that, I realized I was getting married. I was working on the Tavern was taking up a lot of time, and a lot of that time wasn't equating to money, revenue. And so I was having a very hard time trying to figure out ways to make money while still do the Tavern full time. And unfortunately, when I'm working by myself and I start getting involved with affiliate programs, I start writing, all my content is geared towards making money, and I felt like that was really bringing down the site and the quality of content I was writing. Instead of being able to write about the things I was interested in, I was spending time writing about the things that would make me money. So I didn't like that, and I wasn't making enough money, so I decided, this is the only thing I have. I've worked really hard. I've made this online property valuable. I'm going to sell it because I need the money, and I'm going to go move into a different career field, get a different job where I can make some money. So I put the site up for sale, and I have no idea how much it's worth. I just take a guess based on the bills I have and what I want or what I need. So I put the figure out there, like $7,000. I put it out there. And Ryan Emo of WPCandy.com, not sure if you guys remember that website or remember him, but at the time was sort of another WordPress community website, sort of like the Tavern that was sort of having its second renaissance. He had contacted me about purchasing the site, and I said, yeah, sure. That sounds good. We started doing some negotiating in some emails, and I was one email away from selling the website to Ryan when I sent an email to Matt, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about selling the site. This is why, and this is what I'm offering. He ends up replying to me back and says, double whatever it is you're asking for, double it, and I'll buy it. And I said, I'm not going to argue with that. Sold. So I sold it to him for double the amount, and he ended up purchasing the Tavern. And at least for the next year after that, I actually stayed on the Tavern, and he paid me to maintain it for him. So I did that for about a year or two. Then I told him, well, this isn't working out now. I'm not making, I've already gone through the initial money. I'm going through this money. I need to find something where I can make some real money. So we ended up doing some negotiations because I was talking about leaving the WordPress community for good to go find some place to make the money. And we did some negotiations, and it turns out that at the time, Matt Mullenweg had this sort of side project or sister company called Audrey, where he employs people like Otto, Andrew Nason, some of the other people that work on WordPress full-time, where they're not automatic employees, but they're his employees. They work for his company. And it's a little bit different from his investments that he makes. So he actually hired me on as part of Audrey Company so I could do WordPress full-time, have a salary, have a great benefits package, and, it's a hell of a job.
So you work now as part of the WP Tavern. It's you, it's Sarah Gooding. The two of you make some, great posts. Sometimes you're first, sometimes you're not, but you're really on the breaking edge of news. You have your podcast with Marcus Couch. So you're really talking about WordPress every chance you can get. Besides those two roles, what do you really see as your role in the community at large? I mean, who are you besides just somebody that writes for the Tavern and a voice of WP Weekly?
That's a good question. Back in the Tavern's heyday, I felt like I was sort of I almost felt like a community leader, like a liaison between the common folk of the WordPress community, its user base, versus the developers and the core developers of WordPress. I felt like I was sort of this person in the middle who could voice the concerns that users are having to core developers and try and get things changed for the better for everyone involved. I don't know. I feel like now I'm not really in that role anymore, but I think if the Tavern gets the forums back and I start having that one-to-one communication with a lot of people to figure out their concerns, hear them out, and be able to sort of be that intermediary between them and the core project in terms of what changes possibly need to be made, I think I'll fulfill that role again. But I think for the Tavern right now, my role is to, cover the news, but also use the Tavern, my responsibility as a megaphone, give people in the WordPress community a voice or amplify it that maybe wouldn't be possible because it would be drowned out or nobody will listen to them.
That's right. I like that description in your words. That's pretty cool, Jeff. So I'm curious. There's a lot of news now. The WordPress community has gotten pretty big, and so a news site like the Tavern certainly has a lot to do. You got lots of stuff to talk about every episode of WordPress Weekly, and I think there's just so many interesting things going on. As a writer and the person covering all of these things and coming up with articles to write on this very popular blog, tell us a little bit about the kind of content that you really like or that you really want to cover. The kind of stories that you're seeking, the kind of things that you want to publish out for the community to read. What gets you excited about that content?
Well, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but writing about something you're not interested in is probably the hardest thing to do as a writer because you're trudging through every word. You're doing everything you can to make something sound interesting instead of just writing, "It sucks, don't worry about it, get it out of here." But as you said, there's a lot of things going on in this WordPress community, this ecosystem. There's things being launched every week. There's new stuff happening. The good thing for me is I don't have to cover it all. Sarah doesn't have to cover it all. We do a good job. We attempt to cover it all, but you can't do that. As for me, what I write about is pretty easy. I just write about the things that interest me. Whether it interests me or I know that it's going to have a large impact or interest others, those are the things I focus on most. So with that, 75% of the other stuff that's going on in the WordPress community, I have no, okay, fine, I'll take note that it happened, but I'm probably not going to write about it. It's that stuff that really interests me that I can say something interesting about and put that forth towards the audience. That's the stuff I concentrate on. It makes my job a little easier doing it that way instead of focusing on every little tidbit that's going on. Not everything that happens in the WordPress community needs to be on a front page of a big-time news website.
Are there specific topics or types of things that you really, really like to write about, or that you really think, I want to share this kind of topic, this type of issue with the community?
Sometimes it's product launches. If I see a product launch that's innovative and does something really cool or really hits on a pain point that either I've experienced or that a lot of other people that I've spoken with have experienced, I'll write about that. Cool plugins, themes. Usually I don't write too much about themes these days, but if I find one I like that presents content in just a cool way that I haven't seen before, which is getting harder and harder to do now every week, I'll write about those. And just tidbits of what's going on in WordPress core development that I think could have a major impact on a lot of people, because with WordPress running over 20% of the web, all the changes that go on in WordPress affect a lot of people, whether it's good or bad. And sometimes, let's take for instance the new and improved distraction-free writing mode in WordPress 4.1. There was it's sort of an iteration in what was available in 4.0, so I wrote this poll on the Tavern saying, hey, what's your first impression of this? And lo and behold, there's a lot of people to go, yuck, they don't like it. And that part of, we were talking a little bit earlier about my role, that's sort of part of my role as well, to try and get people's voices heard. If they don't like a feature, if they don't like something that's been added to WordPress, where can they voice those thoughts other than on their blog that maybe no one is reading? Well, there's the comment forum on the Tavern, and trust me, a lot of developers read the comments on WP Tavern articles. Did I put you to sleep? Sorry about that.
No, definitely not. All right, you're an experienced speaker and podcaster, and that's what we're going to talk about in this next question here. So WP Weekly, or WordPress Weekly, I should say. Tell us a little bit about how that podcast got its start, how Marcus ended up joining you, and how you came to be as you are now.
So when I launched WP Tavern back in 2009, there was a podcast that I listened to religiously called the WordPress Community Podcast? Geez, I should know the name of this, but it was hosted by Charles Strickland and David Peralty, and he pretty much covered, they would have short interview segments. It was about 45 minutes, or it was either half hour or an hour long, and they talk about the news of the week, and I always felt like after they got done with the show, hey, you guys didn't talk about anything that interested me. What about this story? What about this story? Because I was in the process of trying to know everything that was going on in the WordPress community, and they just had a short sampling of it. So after listening to about 10 or 15 episodes and being frustrated with every one of them, I said, okay, I'm just going to do it on my own. So I found this service called TalkShoe. I didn't know really anything about podcasting at the time, so I found this service called TalkShoe where you could sign up, you get a PIN number, people could call into your show. It used the phone system, so you can call in, and recorded podcasts on there, started WordPress Weekly, ended up talking to like Brad Williams, and I talked to a couple other people who would have this roundtable format, and I'd also, later on in the show, I'd bring on people to interview throughout the show, and that worked out well. A lot of people listened to the show, despite that horrible audio quality because it was using a phone system, a phone bridge. A lot of people listened to the show. Now, over the course of time, I've gone through several different co-hosts, such as David Peralty, Sarah Gooding at one time was a co-host. I've gone through a few others, and right now I have Marcus Couch on. And Marcus Couch joined me because I was looking for another co-host. When you do a podcast and you're going to do it with two people, it's very important that those two people have some sort of chemistry. They know when to shut up. They know when to jump in. They're a go-getter. They're engaged. They want it. They're about as curious as the host of the show. They just want to ask the guests and bring that out. And Sarah is a great writer, but podcasting is not her thing. So I got in touch with Marcus, who has over 10 years worth of experience in radio. He's got a radio voice. He's done podcasting before. And for anyone out there who's listened to the show, I think you'll agree that WordPress Weekly right now is probably at its best point it's ever been in terms of audio quality and just the way we sound together when we do the show.
Mm.
Do you have a favorite episode that you guys have done?
Geez. I've got a couple of favorite episodes, but none off the top of my head. So they're my favorite episodes that I can't think of. You put me on the spot, but almost every episode I do with Marcus is my favorite episode. We've had some great guests on, and we've really dove deep into some topics. And I feel like right now, out of all the years I've been doing and hosting WordPress Weekly, that the show is at the top right now. It's the best it's ever been.
What else is coming?
Congratulations.
Go ahead, Cal. Go.
Oh, I just said congratulations on being at the top.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I don't actually have statistics to know who is listening to the show. So me and Marcus put out this call for action. I said, if you're listening to the show, email us. We ended up getting emails from Tokyo, Russia, Canada, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, just from all over the world. It just flabbergasted me that I can't believe my podcast, people were listening to it from all over the world. That's incredible. It's incredibly humbling.
Yeah.
You still think, now that we've got more variety of these shows going on, we're going now, you've been going for a long time, do you still think that there's room and space in this area for more audio and video about WordPress?
Yes, I do, and the simple reason is the more voices we have, the different perspectives we have, the better. There's no reason why nobody should feel that, well, there's too many voices out there already, nobody's going to hear mine. I strongly disagree. I think you should just go for it, whether it be a blog or whether it be audio. Go ahead, put your thoughts out there, your perspective out there, and as long as you maintain it, as long as you're consistent, you just don't do it for 5 episodes and give up. If you put the work and effort in there, I think you'll be able to find yourself an audience, despite that today it's pretty crowded in the WordPress podcast space.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Jeff. I think that's a pretty cool way to put it. And there is a little bit of crowding, because there's a lot of people talking about WordPress. But I agree with you that there's still a lot more room for people to talk. Like there's not really so much room for people to start cloning podcasts and doing their own version of the same show, covering the same material and doing the same thing as someone else. But I think there's a ton of room for other aspects of this community and this software that we use to be covered in different ways. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for a popular podcast about themes, because themes are visual. So I don't know how you would make that successful on the audio front, but I'd be curious to see someone do a podcast on themes.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that too, and I'm sure it's possible. I mean, there's a lot of front-end web development podcasts where the discussion is all about front-end design stuff and design trends and a lot of visual things. And
yeah, I mean, look at Bogue World. I mean, Paul Bogue, he's got an excellent podcast all about design, and people crave that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you, hey Jeff, do you ever get a chance to get out there to different WordCamps? Do you ever speak? We hear you speak every week. Do you ever get out to the WordCamps and actually present?
So far, I have spoken at 0 WordCamps in terms of just me speaking to an audience. However, I have participated in a few different WordCamps as a panel moderator, and I feel really comfortable in that role, because it's like just doing my show, but in front of an audience. So far, I haven't come across a topic that I feel like I can nail down or that I could present in a good way, so to speak. Maybe my confidence isn't there yet. Yeah, I do the show and I talk to people every week, but doing it in front of an audience, doing a presentation for 30 or 45 minutes and coming across as if you know your stuff, I mean, that's a totally different experience, a totally different way you have to approach things. I just haven't found myself at that point where I feel confident enough to be able to do that. One day, yes, but not soon.
Hey, Jeff, you are a pretty, I would say, connected guy. You've networked quite a lot in this community and been involved heavily in it for a long time. So there's not too many people in the community who don't know who you are, and you pretty much know all of them as well. And I would consider you somebody of all the people I know, one of the people who has a pretty good finger on the pulse of the community and where things are going. And of all the things that I like talking about with you, one of my favorites is talking about where you see things going. So while we're on the subject of WordCamps are really growing. They're popping up in new cities all over the world. They're just everywhere, and more coming every year. And you've been to quite a few. And you recently had a pretty cool episode of WordPress Weekly talking with Andrew Middleton, who talked about it. And new non-WordCamp conferences, WordPress conferences are popping up here left and right. I'd love to hear your thoughts about WordPress conferences and what your predictions are for 2015 and 2016 and the next decade of these events.
Well, we're about half a decade or more in terms of when the first WordCamp occurred. And over the years, as you said, across the world, we're starting to get more and more WordCamps. And in fact, next year, Ohio will have 3 WordCamps, one in the north, one in Columbus, and one in the southwest part of the state, which is incredible. But as we're getting more and more WordCamps, which caters to everyone because there's no limit or exclusivity or anything like that to where you're not allowed to join a WordCamp, we're running into this issue of some folks have been to so many WordCamps, they're looking for something more. They're looking for something that's maybe dev-centric or something that's really core to the things they're really interested in. So I'm ecstatic to see events like WooCommerce, an event just for WooCommerce, the plugin and its community and ecosystem. And I also think that's a sign of the maturity of not only that platform and plugin, but that the community surrounding that platform and plugin, that they're able to create a conference around it. So that's really cool. And then you're starting to see like LoopComp, a conference just for developers, and you're starting to see a couple of other things like Coders Guild down in Atlanta. Except that's an interesting situation down there because if you look at the meetups, which are sort of the nucleus of most of these WordCamps, if it's going to be paid for by the WordPress Foundation, you can't have any exclusivity things put on to you have to be open to everybody, no matter what skill set or anything of that nature. And if you look at this new WordPress Coders Guild down in Atlanta that's been organized, they only want dev-centric people in their event. Now, they don't want any of the newbies or people who know how to edit some code. They want hardcore developers only in their group. So they actually had to create a WordPress WordCamp outside of the Meetup guidelines, sort of create it without their help. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see more and more of that because you can only do so much within guidelines to the point where if you want to do something or you want to only have a certain subset of people or skill level at your event, you have to do it outside the guidelines because WordCamps and the WordPress Foundation is all about openness to all. Everybody's welcome, and you can't do that in some of these specific events. So I think in the future we're going to see more specific events, whether it's e-commerce, WooCommerce, or like a Yoast SEO type of WordCamp, and we're going to see them all across the country, all across the world, in addition to all these other WordCamps as well.
It's funny you bring that up because we've had a couple of guests on that have talked about just stuff like that because something like, I think one person mentioned Boat Camp and one person mentioned Beach Camp where they just got together with just people that they knew or just a small group and went to the house or got on a boat or did their thing. And so, yeah, obviously that wasn't open to everybody, but I think that's very interesting. Do you think that's possibly another aspect of it?
Right. I mean, instead of having a WordCamp where there's 200 people, let's just have a beach press where it's me and 20 of whoever wants to show up and participate. You know, if you want to talk, let's network. Let's do it in the confines of a nice beach house that we all chip in and afford, and we can have networking opportunities. Like we've already had Beach Press. We've had this retreat in Vancouver one year. We've had a couple of other of these events throughout the country, and I think you're going to see more of that with the localized 20 to 30 person type events where you know you're just able to get more things done, and you're able to concentrate more on a specific set of things that you want to discuss versus 20, 30 sessions at a WordCamp.
That's cool. My next question for you was, you've already brought up a few times about how you kind of bridge that gap between the user and the developer. That was your goal, or what time was your goal? How do you engage with that other side of this, what I consider to be a WordPress community that is not the developers? Because a lot of people come on here, we bring a lot of developer types on here, but people who, the Pat Flynn's of the world, people who are using WordPress to do their thing, that their thing is not WordPress, that it's pushing out information and networking and marketing.
Well, for me, I don't know PHP from ABC. I know a little bit to create a white screen of death, and that's about all I need to know. As far as being a coder being concerned. But WordPress, over 2/3 of who uses WordPress are users, average Joes, people who just need a website, who know how to install a plugin, who know how to install a theme, who know how to break it. And those are the people I can gel with. But at the same time, I know who to contact or who to call or whoever to try and explain to me, so that I can also, if I can understand it, I think through my writing I could get other people to understand it, and that's sort of what one of my goals is with the Tavern and what I write about. And so far, a lot of people have told me, well, why don't you learn to code? I tried to learn how to code. I can't do it, or that part of my brain's missing or turned off, either or. Rick would know, but
Yeah.
I just can't. I can't function. I can't learn how to code. I've tried. It just doesn't work that way. So if I come across it and I just use what the developers code, I'm very good at telling them whether it sucks or whether something should be changed, or why are you doing this when it should be this color but you're using this color. I'm very good at that stuff. So that's what I concentrate on. That's how I bridge the gap between user and developer, because I am a user.
Do you think because you have your feelers out so deeply in the community, and you use so many products and things like that, that you have
We got something going on there. You got some weird static going on.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That was crazy.
Better?
No, it only happens when you talk.
Better now?
Nope.
Oh, sorry. Disregard.
Kellen out. All right, Jeff. Let me change the topic a little bit here. Let me ask you about Jeff, the employee, and I know there's a big thing out there where a lot of people struggle with working remotely. I know you work from home, and I know there's times where it's a challenge for you to be productive and get into a schedule, because you went from working, a scheduled job, and now you work from home, and it's a totally different thing. What can you share out there with some of the audience that are struggling to make this working remote thing work for them? And what have you done? What can you suggest?
Well, for those who think that working remotely is the next best thing since sliced bread, no, it's not. Let me give you a reality check. It's very hard. It's very interesting to go from working an 8-hour job where I'm walking around for maybe a couple miles a night to sitting in a desk chair all day and working and not really doing anything in terms of physical exercise except lifting the glass or pop to my mouth. I mean, it's been a struggle. I mean, and when you're working remotely, and you're one of the ways in which you could tell if you're working is to measure output, and it's very tough to make sure that everything is on me now. There's no excuses. If there's not a couple of articles written by me on the website, it's because I didn't write them. So there's that added pressure of everything is on me to get it done. And I'm still struggling, even after almost 2 years of working remotely. I'm still trying to find out my groove, find out how to make this thing work. And also, I've almost reached a point now where I really I let my health suffer. So since starting to work remotely, I've gained about 20 or 30 pounds. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I mean, that's just a struggle. That's just part of my change into working remotely. So I'm still trying to find that life and work balance between, taking care of myself, but also being able to get the job done. So far, I haven't found the right recipe, but I'm still looking. I'm still trying some things out. Every day is like an ongoing experiment to try and figure out what can I do that can routinely work.
I have some of those same issues there. I tried the sitting ball for a while, and that worked pretty well. But then I moved and I left it, and I'm really thinking about getting another one of those. And just a couple dumbbells to let me kill some time when I'm like thinking and not working. But, yeah, definitely understand where you're coming from. It's easy to get wrapped up because when I get up in the morning, while I'm waiting on my cup of coffee, I start my emails and I pour my cup of coffee and start drinking, and that's it. And I'm all ready to work. I'll squeeze a shower in an hour later, but I'm already into that track, and it is hard to stop. Even now, in the evening when we're doing this show, I'm still in front of the computer and 100% of the time.
Well, I haven't reached that point yet where my hygiene suffers because my wife won't let me go that far. But it's everything else I got to worry about.
You guys got to try the standing desk, man.
I think Kellen says I got to try the standing desk, and that's something I'm going to look into. It seems to be the thing that all remote workers are doing these days. So I guess anything that can get me up standing, moving around more, anything that can promote physical activity is good. That's something I got to look into.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of links lately there's a standing desk at IKEA that's supposed to be really good, and it's not very expensive compared to, I know industry-wide standing desks are usually quite pricey, but this one's only like $200, and I've seen quite a few people blog about their experience with it, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, so that's a great segue to my next question, which is this is the last episode that we're going to do this year. We're taking next week off, and so we've got Christmas this week and then New Year's. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about some of your New Year's resolutions and goals for 2015. What does that look like?
Well, whatever I tell you, I'm not going to do them. So lose weight, yeah, probably won't happen. Actually, for 2014, I gave myself a New Year's resolution to read one book, to get back into reading books. It's something I've been wanting to do now for a long time, and I have this chair behind me that you can see my illustrious 10-year-old Yorkie loves. I barely get a chance to sit in it because she's always in it, but my New Year's resolution for this year was to read one book a month, and I did great for the first 4 or 5 months, and then I fell off. The hardest part for me is actually starting the book, and I never got around to just sitting down and getting into it. So I'm going to try and get back on the saddle for next year, try and read more books. Other than that, okay, I'm gonna say it legitimately, try and lose weight. At this point, I have to. Based on when I look down, it's like seeing a second me, right there. But yeah, so I'm gonna do that, and then I'm also gonna try, of course, try and find a way to create this life balance issue. That's a resolution I'm gonna try out for next year as well. Maybe sleep with my wife some more because she's in there sleeping and I'm here doing your show, which is all part of this remote work thing. So.
That's so great.
You heard it here. Just gonna sleep with his wife.
All right.
More. Gonna sleep with my wife more.
More. Okay. Perfect. Well, so that's your personal resolution. Maybe let's talk professionally. What does 2015 hold for the Tavern and for WordPress Weekly? Where do you want to take those? What new heights do you want to reach?
Well, when I participated in the WordPress News Roundtable on WordStash, which occurred this past weekend, a couple of interesting things were brought up in terms of what is missing in the WordPress News landscape. What are some areas of content that were just not being covered very well in the WordPress space? And one of those things is the process of what it took to create the product, the process of what it took to get the website to a point where you could launch it. I think a lot of people want to know more about the process versus the end result. So I'm going to try and do my part in illustrating and telling the story of the process more in 2015. So that means interviewing more people, getting their take, and figuring out what they did in their process for getting things accomplished. I also want to see maybe 2015 is the year the forum comes back in some way on the Tavern. I'm going to be pushing for it. I don't know what will happen, but that's something I'm looking forward to. Other than that, just rock and roll with the WordPress Weekly. Hopefully, I can get back into bringing people on that are outside the WordPress sphere. I'd like to get some more of those people on versus just people who are inside this WordPress bubble to try and get a different perspective and a different viewpoint. So I'm going to work on that for next year, and that's about it.
Awesome. So we've got a few other questions for you that, since we're winding down towards the end of our hour, that just flew by ridiculously fast.
This is a lightning round.
Yeah, let's call it the lightning round. We need, for anybody thinking about it, we need a better, more original name for our lightning round of the questions we have to ask, but we run out of time, so they need to be short. So here's our lightning round that should be renamed to something else. All right, Jeff, what do you do for fun?
Other than sitting on my butt all day writing about WordPress, which sometimes is fun, I like trains. Some people think that's weird. Well, I don't know why it's weird, because some people like some things that I consider weird, but I like to go to this one restaurant. I've always had this fascination with trains ever since I was smaller, when they used to use the caboose. And I mean, there's just something like standing not right next to the tracks, but standing close by the tracks when you have a couple thousand horsepower come screaming by you, just that rush of adrenaline, that source of power, and then just seeing the different freight and realizing that this country, this United States of America, North America, a lot of it is run by freight, and just to see all the different types of freight, whether it be it's the things that help make this country run, it all being transported by trains. So I don't know, I just have a fascination with trains. So whenever I get the opportunity, I go to my favorite rail fanning spot, which is what they call people who are in the trains, and I just sit there and watch them. And to me, that's fun.
All right. So here's one for you. If you were a superhero, what would your name be and your superpower?
Let's see. There's a ton I could say that are R-rated, but I'm going to keep those to myself. Let's see.
We already heard about some of that.
All right.
If I was a superhero, geez, man, you really know how to put someone on the spot. I have no idea what my superhero name would be.
You hear it here first. Jeff Chandler without anything to say.
Yeah. Speechless.
I am. I'm speechless.
Hey, Jeff, who's your favorite jazz artist?
Nobody. Because I listen to a lot of rock music, and I've heard jazz, and I like jazz, but I sure as hell don't know who's playing the music. I just listen to it. I just listen to good music without knowing who the hell's doing it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, later on when you think of it, you can tweet us your superhero name.
All right. I will think about this long and hard tonight. Okay,
do that. Okay, so if you had to use another CMS besides WordPress for some reason, what would you use?
So that's a good question, and when I think about it, and I've used some of the newer ones that are out there, like Ghost. There's another one called ProcessWire. It comes down to, it almost has to have feature parity with WordPress. It has to be WordPress, but not WordPress. If that makes any sense, or it has to do what WordPress does, except better. It has to have some semblance of a community, whether through themes and plugins. It has to have an ecosystem. Right now, I don't see anything out there that comes close to the WordPress I use. Finding something that's as easy to publish content with out of the box, which has most of what I need in terms of feature-wise, where I don't have to add plugins. So I'll be sticking with WordPress for a long time, but if I had to choose another CMS right now, geez, right now it'd be nothing. But if I had no other choice, if someone says, okay, you can no longer use WordPress anymore, I would probably end up going back to Joomla, because that's what I know, and I could probably figure my way around it. And I've monitored development of Joomla over the years, and they're starting to get more and more features that WordPress has, like revisions and auto saves, and I think they're building in a new update system. So I'd probably go with Joomla.
All right then. So another question: who are some names of people in the community that really inspire you, Jeff Chandler? That just make you think, this is a great community. I want to do more. I'm inspired by these people in the community.
One of them would be Chris Lemma, just because he's such a giving guy. The guy knows a lot, and he seems to give more than he gets. Corey Miller from iThemes. That guy is fantastic. I love the way he runs his business and how he motivates, he uplifts everyone around him. Anytime you get a chance to go to a WordCamp where he's the keynote speaker, definitely do it. You won't be disappointed. Sarah Gooding, my coworker, she inspires me because she is just an awesome writer, and the way she tells her stories is fantastic, and she seems to be in beast mode all the time. I can't replicate her output. I don't know. I've been trying. I just can't do it. And Matt Medeiros, he's actually been inspiring because he's doing what he can to get people who want to make WordPress their living, whether it be through products or something else. He's helping them out and doing everything he can to make sure they're successful. There's a couple of other people as well, but those are just some of the names off the top of my head.
So who would be some good candidates for us to invite to be on the show as a future guest?
Well, you already had Nick. That would have been my first guest. Well, let's see. You already had Marcus Couch on, so he's eliminated. I would like you to actually, I don't know if she'd be able to do it. I'd love for you to interview Sarah. that would be pretty interesting if she'd be willing to do it.
It's funny that you asked that because she already said no.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Chris Lemma would have been great, but I'm sure you probably already had him on the show. Chris Wallace from UpThemes, he'd probably be a good one to have on the show. Rob New, Ryan Sullivan, a couple of other people. Let's see. Nope, that's about it. That's about all I have off the top of my head.
All right, Jeff. So are there any questions that you wanted us to ask that we didn't get around to?
No. You've asked me all the questions, including the ones I told you not to ask me, and not just only kidding. No, I had a great time on the show. I think we covered just about everything.
Awesome. Well, we're really thrilled that you came by to join us and talk about all this stuff. And actually, there's really a lot of stuff that we didn't get to talk about. So there's a reasonable chance that in the future I might ask you to come join us and talk again. And definitely we'll be bumping into each other in the future. I suppose it'd be a good time to say how people can find you. You can say online and also at events that you might be participating in or present at in the coming year.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Jeffro, that's JEFFR0, of course, WPTavern.com. I will be going to Pressnomics in January for the All Things Business and WordPress event. So if you're going out to Phoenix area in January, I think it's the 22nd, it starts on the 22nd, be sure to look me up. And then after that, I have no WordCamps on my schedule, but I'm probably going to attend, or at least try to, all three in Ohio. So I'll be going to those, and looking forward to possibly going to Seattle and a couple of other places I've been really wanting to go to that have been having WordCamps. I'm still waiting for WordCamp Wyoming, or there's actually we have all these WordCamps here in the U.S., but there's still a couple of states that haven't had any WordCamps whatsoever. There's like no one lives there.
WordCamp Maine.
That's right. Yeah. Well, they'll come eventually.
I hope so.
Do you participate in your local Meetup group?
Yes, I do. My local Meetup group is on holiday right now. We've been on holiday for the past God knows how many months. It's been about 2 or 3. But see, we usually do our events, our meetings on the 4th Thursday of every month, and this year almost every holiday, major holiday, is on the 4th Thursday or some Thursday. So we're on holiday, but I think we'll get back into the groove of things starting next month.
Awesome. That's great. Well, Jeff, thanks a lot for joining us, you and Vesty. We appreciated...
She woke up.
Sure. We appreciated your time, and thanks a lot for joining us. Keep up the good work writing for the Tavern. You know that we will at least be reading every article and listening to every episode of your podcast, so keep that up as well. I hope you have a Merry, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So, happy holidays to you and your family.
And hey, don't forget, yesterday was Jeff's birthday, so wish him a belated happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Jeff.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I had a great time on the show, guys. Keep up the good work. And it's a shame we couldn't get Sarah on. That would have been fun, but I might have to ask her about that later when I get off the show. Maybe I could talk her into it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'd appreciate
Happy
it.
birthday, Merry Christmas, and thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, Merry New Year and Happy Holidays or whatever it is.
Yes, sir.
Merry Holidays, Happy New Year or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say because I don't know if I'll offend any of you. So, you got to play it safe these days.
I'm
I'll
offended by
say
pretty much everything, so it doesn't matter.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year.
Yeah. We'll see you in January.